If you get the application and cloud of smoke, you're gone, then more than likely, I would anticipate a chargeback.
Yeah. The goal is to be a difference maker in our clients' lives so that they can be a difference maker in their families' lives. That's our number one goal. Our goal is not to sell a policy, get the commitment, hang up, write your number on the board, high five, ring a bell, and forget about them and never address it again.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Life Insurance Academy podcast. We're back, Zach and I. We've got some gold nuggets for you.
So quarters, dimes, and nickels.
That's right. This episode is going to be a little different. We are focusing on your profitability. We love this. Mm-hmm. We love these conversations.
This is the real stuff, Chris.
This is the work. It's DA space work that has to be done to be profitable. And it's not always just writing another policy. It's also keeping your business on the books.
Yes.
And we're going to dive into that. I knew that was important to you at one time.
It was. It actually, how did you know that?
I have my suspicions.
That scary word of chargeback that no matter how long you've been in the business, you don't really like it, but you learn to accept it, embrace it, and
that it's part of the business.
Minimize it.
Correct.
100%. And I was going to be honest with you, Chris. When I very first started in this business, I came into this, I'm more of an introverted person. I didn't really want to go out and meet a lot of new people. Mm-hmm. I didn't really want to do any type of traveling or put myself out there. I'm not jumping up and down to get on stage all the time, But the thing is it was inevitable for everybody. So I would work as hard as I can, try to serve as many families as I can, do the absolute best I can. But despite that effort, there still were chargebacks that were coming or clients that would want to cancel for whatever reason. Again, I'm new. So I'm just trying to, I'm stumbling over my script, my presentation, just trying to make ends meet, like a lot of our listeners are. And in all honesty, Chris, I would rather and tried to just kind of avoid addressing any of that.
Pretending
and I would
it's
just
not happening.
pretending it's not happening and just go try to write more policies and see new families.
Yeah.
And the reason I did that was the fear of facing them and them telling me they no longer want it.
Yeah.
That they don't, and it made me feel like I didn't do a good job. It made me feel like that I didn't serve them the way I wanted to serve them. And I just couldn't face that defeat or whatever you would call it. Failure. So I would avoid that.
Yes.
And I would go try to write new policies.
That can be exhausting.
It is very exhausting. And I was told, I don't know, I used to ask everybody questions in the industry, so I couldn't tell you who it was, but I was told one time that it's a lot easier and more profitable to keep a policy on the books than it is to go out and try to rewrite a new policy. All because the policy that you've already sold, A, believes in the idea of life insurance. They have somebody they love and they want to protect, and they at least initially committed to a monthly payment coming out of their budget to take care of this for someone.
Yeah.
Versus going to call or knock on the door of somebody that I haven't met yet, I haven't went through a presentation yet, I haven't went through the whole 9 yards with, to kind of give you some perspective there.
Yeah, and this is a topic we'll revisit from time to time because throughout the sales process and presentation, there are multiple dials that you can turn to make sure you aren't playing catch up or being chased. Like you said, the key word there is minimize it. And if you're a good agent, you're going to see persistency of 80, 85, 90%, maybe even higher if you are turning those dials correctly. You still have to pick up the phone and call these people, like you said, and have a conversation. And sometimes they'll surprise you. I mean, is it worth getting 50% back on
I will say this: when I started doing the retention side of this,
Mm-hmm.
it was actually more than 50%. Probably 80% of the people that I did call it was a misunderstanding.
Yeah,
it was either
bank issue.
it was a bank issue, or I wrote down a wrong number, or they gave me a wrong number. It could have been something else was messed up. I did, one thing or another. It typically wasn't the reason, but anytime that there was it was more of not of an embarrassment for me. It was an embarrassment for them because
Correct.
maybe they bit off a little bit more than they could chew.
Yes.
And it's easier for them to try to call the insurance company and cancel rather than call me up and say, hey, Zach, I can't really afford this $12,000 plan. I'm wondering if we can maybe do 8.
Correct.
They would try to save face and they would just try to cancel the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just protecting their ego. And I get it. I understand.
Yeah.
And just picking up the phone, having the conversation, then being able to say, hey, Mrs. Jones, I just want to give you a quick call. I know this was important to you. I don't want to alarm you.
Yes.
That's how I would say it. I don't want to alarm you. Your policy is not enforced right now. We need to get that back in place. All right. So I'm going to ask you some questions and then let them talk.
Exactly. What you just said there is so gold, because the way you presented that is you're still the assistant buyer. You're protecting them. You're on their team.
Yeah.
You're doing this together. You're doing customer service, and you didn't want them to freak out, but we need to get this fixed so we can make sure we're protecting the daughter.
We didn't even talk about this before the podcast. That's just an extra piece, just the extra gold. What we do want to talk to you about is what we would call
introduce them to the new term. They may have not heard this term before.
the cooldown.
Yeah,
The cooldown.
Cooldown.
That's right. We went through this training recently with agents for telesales, and as a new agent, it's easy to get excited about writing an application, and you're mentally high-fiving the team. You got the application, and all right, Mrs. Jones, if you need anything, give me a call back, and then click. You've hung up.
Perfect.
And yeah, perfect. And there's while you're high-fiving on the other end, Mrs. Jones is might have some questions. She feels
Buyer's remorse.
maybe buyer's remorse,
What did I just do?
lack of trust.
Who was that I talked to?
That was a whirlwind. Yeah.
Did I make a mistake?
All those things could be creeping up. And, the thing we talk about in our training a lot of times is the relationship between competence and confidence and trust. And the more you are in control of your process, you're mastering your process, the more the clients internally are putting their dukes down and saying, yeah, I can trust Zach. I can trust Zach. I can trust Zach. But that trust is maintained throughout the entire conversation. That's true face-to-face. It's also true on the phone. More true on the phone.
You got to be careful with that dad finger you're waving over there. That thing's getting violent during this podcast.
Well, the reason I paused there is because on face-to-face, I can do this, and you can see me, and I can get closer to you, and all those things are, 80% of conversations are nonverbal? 80% of communication is nonverbal. Isn't that crazy? Now, if you're on the phone, try doing that nonverbal conversation. It does. Even when I'm on the phone, I use my hands when I talk. But so it's so important that you are maintaining that trust all the way through. And if you get the application and cloud of smoke, you're gone.
Yeah.
Then more than likely, I would anticipate a chargeback.
Yeah. To add to that, again, guys, the goal is to be a difference maker in our clients' lives so that they can be a difference maker in their families' lives. That's our number one goal. Our goal is not to sell a policy, get the commitment, hang up, write your number on the board, high five, ring a bell, and forget about them and never address it again, right? Because we just talked about that other scenario where Miss Betty or Miss Jones, what she's thinking, what's going through their head right there. One of the biggest mistakes that I see that newer telesales agents make is they don't establish initially or throughout that human element of connection.
Yes.
Right. For an example, there's not a lot of insurance carriers out there that are being written on a weekly basis, regardless of what group you're associated with. Everybody pretty much has the same type of carrier lineups, and even inside the carriers, they have the same types of coverages and a very similar rate. The biggest difference between one to the other is the agent's ability to connect, establish that trust, walk them through, and the client to feel as if Chris really has their family's back and is taken care of. So as a new agent, one thing that we see, and just recently in one of our boot camps, is the human element of, number one, treating them like they're a human and not somebody that you have to talk real fast and get them to sign up for something, which means they have a life, they've had a career, they have a family, they have hobbies, they've had life experiences. And the other thing, which may be a shocker to you guys, but you guys have had a life too. There's things that you like to do. You have hobbies. You have a family. You have been through things.
Yeah.
You've experienced things. Like, we need to bring some of those together throughout the presentation as well.
Yeah, and when we talk about scripting, we talk about it in terms of it being the kind of the framework and the skeleton of the conversation. You are the rest of it. You bring the rest of it. And if you get to the end of your presentation, regardless if you got a sale or not, you should be able to answer these questions. Who are the people most important to them?
Yep.
What is that relationship like? What do they do for a living? Do they still work? What do they like to do for fun? And what does it look like when they're with their families together? What matters most to them? Do they have pets? I mean, at the end of the call, when you hang up, that is the human element. And you should be able to answer those questions.
Yep. And we have an acronym for that to help people remember. And that acronym is CORE, which is CORE. And what does that stand for, Chris?
Children, occupation, recreation, and emotion.
Exactly. So this is more of a guideline. You don't need to read off questions like that to a robot. And the worst thing you can do is say, okay, how many kids you have? Okay, what'd you do for a living? Not at all. That's not the way you operate this. But if you're in a telesales situation, which slightly differs from a face-to-face situation where most of that core building or trust building is established at the very beginning, where in telesales, it's kind of trickled in throughout. One big tip that I have is when you're not intentionally trying to have a pause for an emotional response reason, so if you're doing it non-intentionally, so it could be, let's say your internet is loading, let's say that you're looking for quotes, let's say whatever the situation may be, fill some of those gaps with casual conversation, getting to know them, getting to know their family, as you said, the tightness, their hobbies, what they did for a living. Heck, a lot of these people are retired or on disability, and the job or career that they had is pretty much their identity. Everybody in town knows Bob is the plumber, right? It's just kind of how it goes. So you need to be able to establish that so we can use some of that and make a smoother cool down at the end.
Yeah. So you have some steps for cool down. These are all ingredients that we've kind of addressed. And again, there will be other podcasts about this where we'll deep dive into some of those other pieces.
Yep.
But we really wanted to dial in at the end of this because I don't want you hanging up right after the sale and Mrs. Smith feeling a certain kind of way, as the kids say, about the process, right?
Yep.
And then ultimately you.
100%.
Yeah. So let's talk through that framework.
Yeah. So first of all, the cool down is the portion after the sale has been made, the application has been signed and submitted. Okay. This is where the cool down begins. If you've never heard of that or experienced this time, then you probably have experienced some chargebacks or some phone calls come in a few days later. But we really have 3 simple steps for you that you can implement and make a difference today in your next sale. The number 1 step is to completely summarize. Even though you've went through the presentation, even though Miss Jones has said that, yes, she understands and knows how insurance work, even if she has another policy in place, even if we just went through that right before the close, we want to summarize everything we've done today, and more importantly, commend them on doing the right thing, being an amazing grandmother, being an amazing mother, being an amazing spouse to take care of this for their family and how good it is, and to make sure that they feel that empowerment for taking care of this. The second step, and I'll let you dive into this one, Chris, is to really set those expectations of what's coming next and give them a couple promises.
Yeah. So on this piece, this is what we do know. Okay. We do know that they may put this in a drawer and possibly forget about it. We do know they may have questions about it, and they may fill something out. And somebody may call them or knock on their door and talk to them about this again. So we want to tie this down the best we can for keeping this business on the books and that relationship with the client. So I can say something to Zach. I can say, Zach, when we went through this process, and we've already done the first part of this, and I've commended you, and I've said, do you feel better? That's going to be one of my questions.
Yes, I do.
Do you feel
Thank
better
you,
right now that this is taken care of? Great.
Yes, I do.
All right. So throughout this process, we've made important promises to you. So I'm going to ask you to make 2 promises to me. Okay.
Okay.
Number 1, if this ever becomes unaffordable for you, I want you to call me and talk to me about it, okay? Because I don't want you to lose any equity in your plan. And we'll figure it out. We're going to make sure that you're taken care of, okay?
Okay.
All right. Number 2, if anybody else comes and talks to you about another product that could be better for you, I want you to call me. Because there are some agents out there who do not have the knowledge about your specific conditions that I do, and it may not be better for you. But I'll tell you this, if it is better, I want to be able to do the paperwork for you and make sure that you get that plan. If it's not good for you, I want to be able to call that other agent and let them know why it's not good for you so they don't bother you again, okay?
I appreciate that, Chris. I want you to know that you're our insurance man.
Boom. I'd give you knuckles if I was sitting right there. So, yeah. So that's what that looks like.
Absolutely. So that's an amazing tip, Chris. I don't know how many policies that can save, relationships that can strengthen from that. But one of the biggest portions of that is kind of unintentional, but it's you being a good person, is the amount of referrals you would generate off of just asking them for 2 promises. Just solidifies that trust and commitment that you have to each other.
Right. And at that point, it's great to have them pull out their phone or they're on the phone with you. I'm sorry. But have them put you on speakerphone and make sure your number's in their phone.
Absolutely.
As, Chris, the insurance man, I'll put you in my phone as well. Like, this is where it gets really human, If you ever need anything, anybody else I could help, I'd be glad to help.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then the third main step is to connect with them again on anything other than insurance. Okay. So this is going to be, again, talking about the children, right?
Yes.
All that information we gathered about children, what they did for a living, what they like to do for fun, hobbies. So when you get into the kids together again, are you all getting together for 4th of July? Or are they all coming to your house for Christmas this year? Or is there any big family reunions or birthdays coming up? Just kind of that human element. And the reason being is, number 1, they didn't know exactly when you were going to call. So they were living normal daily life. If they talk to their daughter every day, if they're watching the grandkids, if they're going on their walk, they're in their daily life routine, okay? We call them up. All of a sudden, we start chit-chatting, and we going through the different programs that are available for them. Their mindset, not positive or negative, it starts talking about death and dying, for being honest, and preparing and taking care of their family. We're walking them through how important it is. We're bringing out the emotions of protecting their loved ones. We're painting the picture of potentially them dying without any coverage. We're painting the picture of the effects for generations to come if they do have the coverage. We're taking them through this emotional journey, if you will. And then we don't just want to leave Miss Jones in that mindset.
Yeah,
as
that
we
feels
leave.
weird.
We want to, in lack of a better word, put her back where we found her. Right?
Yeah.
Like we want to talk about life again. We want to be a human again, and we want to remind them that we're not just this guy that they'll never talk to, that we have a family, that we are connecting with them, and we want to talk about and know that we care about them much more than just that policy. And it really solidifies everything that we've talked about and strengthens that relationship.
And it's really the difference between helping them solve a problem versus selling them something. And throughout that whole process, if we did it correctly, they feel like we helped them solve a problem. And if we hang up at the end, they may feel like, if without going through this process, they may feel like we sold them something.
Well, here's the biggest thing. They have two issues. They have two issues. Number one is they don't have any coverage or not enough in place. That is a huge problem for them, especially at their age when they know that the time ticker is going down.
Yeah.
The problem bigger than that is they don't have anybody they could trust to go to get this taken care of.
Right. Mm-hmm.
That's where we solidify those two issues.
Yeah. Yeah. We want to keep this short for you guys. I hope this has been valuable for you. Zach, can you give them the three again?
Absolutely. Number one, summarize and commend. Number two, set expectations and ask for 2 promises for them to give us. And number three, connect with them again on being a human, anything and everything other than insurance.
Bingo. And the extra piece, guys, you, agent, pick up the phone, have a conversation. If you have lost policies, you will be surprised how many you can get back on the books just by talking to them, just by asking them some questions, checking in on them. Don't want you to be alarmed. I saw that your policy had lapsed. We want to make sure, I know it was important to you that Tammy has something in place, and we want to make sure that's there. So I just wanted to call you real quick.
Why don't you ask our listeners to give us 2 promises?
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. If this is helpful for you to keep business on the books, if you are able to get business back on the books by making some calls, then do us a favor and subscribe and like and tell people about the podcast, because we want to make a difference in more lives.
Put in the comments that this podcast gave you the confidence to make 1 phone call on a pending or lapsed policy, and you got it in the books. That would be awesome for us to see.
We would love that.
That would be a huge win.
We'd high five and talk about you for a month. Cool. Well, thank you guys. We can't wait to catch you on the next Life Insurance Academy podcast. See you then.